Looking after your mountain bike is really important, but in order to do that, you're going to need some tools. Now, tools can be very expensive, and of course, we've got a huge array of tools at our disposal here to show you how to use them all. But you need to start somewhere. So today I'm going to break it down for you, and we're going to make a modular toolkit. So that's going to be the base of tools that you need to get started working on your bike. Some of these are going to be suitable for use in your home workshop, and some for out on the trail. So before we get started looking at the individual tools, I want to break it down into a few little subcategories. Now you get classic workshop spec tools, stuff like this, right? You're not going to really take these out on the trail with you for doing maintenance. These are for doing bigger jobs at home. And you need to identify the sort of jobs that you're comfortable doing before you go spending money on the tools, because it could be unnecessary to start with. Then you get trail tools. For example, this is a Toe Peak Alien. It's actually got 31 tools on it. It's a crazy sized tool. You can do actually most things, to be fair, with this, although as your skills develop as a mechanic, you're going to need more specific tools that are easier to use in different spaces on the bike. But to get started with, you could arguably start with a trail tool, and of course that can stay in your riding bag, or you can use it in the garage at home. And then the final choice, of course, is a dedicated workshop toolkit. Now you can buy these from Park, from Toe Peak, from X-Tools, a whole number of different brands that offer different levels of toolkit, and they come in their own case with a number of tools. Now these are really good value for money, but quite often they'll come with a lot of tools that you might not necessarily need on your bike. For example, cone spanners and things like that. That suggests that you're going to be doing more advanced stuff like adjusting the cones on your wheel axles and things like that. So take a little step back for a minute, and we're going to look at a bare minimum to get going. And of course, as your skills develop, as you start looking after more things on your bike, you can add things to your toolkit, both home and on the trail. Now, first things first, you're going to need a set of Allen keys. Now, most mountain bikes are covered in Allen key bolts. To do almost any job on your bike, you're going to need a set of Allen keys. Now, how you get started is up to you. There's a few different ways you can do this. Of course, there's workshop style Allen key sets, but they are very expensive in comparison to buying a multi-tool equivalent. Now, this is actually probably about 20 years old, just to show by comparison. I've had this for a long time. That's what they look like now. So it's quite dated, but still, it shows that buying a good multi-tool is worth it because all of the edges are nice and sharp. And the thing that I love about a multi-tool like this is dedicated Allen key set. I use this in the workshop at home, and I keep it in the back of the car sometimes as well. And I can use this on the trail. So it actually represents great value for money. A dedicated trail style tool, however, is a lot more compact, and although it has more tools on it, they're not quite as good for working on your bike in a home environment. They're more a case of being able to nip up a bolt or two if something comes loose while you're out on the trail. I do recommend getting some kind of trail multi-tool. However, it's not going to be used that much as a daily. If you just want to save some money in the first instance, get yourself something like this. This has a 6, it has a 5, 4, 3, 2, 2.5. It has all the essentials on there to look after your bike. And in addition to that, you'll need an 8mm Allen key. Just get a single one. You don't need to get a whole big set of these things. Those two items will be able to look after most things. They're small enough to take on the trail with you, and they're good enough to work home on a daily basis. Saves yourself a bit of money. And then in time, you can add to your home kit and you can add to your trail kit. Next up is, if you can afford it, a trail multi-tool. Now, I recommend trying to keep one of these in your riding bag or on your bike, for example. I have a bottle cage that actually houses this tool on my particular bike here. This is a Toe Peak Ninja tool. Now, the great thing about these is they're always on your bike or they're always in your bag. So in the eventuality that something comes loose, could be a disc rotor bolt, it could be your saddle clamp, literally anything, you can take care of it on the trail. You don't need to fret about taking your Allen keys from home out. Again, you need to be able to afford this in addition to a home or a more portable multi set of Allen keys. So you do need to factor that in. If you're going to get one of these, make sure it has a chain tool on it. One of my recommendations in building your first modular toolkit is to have a chain tool, but a chain tool is a very specific tool that you're not going to need to use that often. So you can actually save yourself a bit of money by getting a trail tool that has a chain tool on it. It's good enough for occasional use at home, and it's going to get you out of bother when you're on the trail. This one is very minimal. It's got just about what you need on there. Like I say, it's going to get you out of trouble. It's definitely worth trying to put some money aside to get one to keep with your riding gear. Next up, tyre levers. You're going to get a puncture at some point. You will need to take your tyre off. Now, some tyres you can take off by hand, others you're going to need a tyre lever. Get yourself 3 and get yourself the sort of plastic nylon type because they're much harder to break. Try and avoid the metal ones at all costs because they can damage the rims on your bike and they can also damage your tyres. I say get 3 because 1 will normally do it. Sometimes you need 2 with a stubborn tyre and you're going to lose 1. So get 3 and you're safeguarded. Next up is the Torx T25. Now, although not that common around the whole bike, you always see it in the form of disc rotor bolts. Now, of course, this is slightly different to using an Allen key. Very similar, although you'll notice some people might call it the star key or something like that. It's called the Torx head, basically. Now, it might be sensible to get yourself a multi-tool that's got a load of them, but in reality, you're probably only ever going to need the Torx T25 on your bike. Some brakes do have slightly different size ones on. Formula brakes, for example, have a lot of different ones. But my top tip to get started is check the kit that came in your bike. It's quite likely that it might have one of these little Allen keys in. Now, these are known as a bit more like a throwaway Allen key. They're harder to use because they're much smaller, but you've got the all-important T25 on there. You get these with various different brakes as well, if you bought your brakes aftermarket, and they will suffice for the time being. Just be careful when you're using them with your disc rotor because of the size of them. If you slip, you can take the skin off your knuckles. So if you can afford it, get yourself a dedicated one, but you can get away with one of these to start with. If your bike does happen to have a lot more options on there, then save yourself the hassle in the long run and get yourself the multi-tool with it, because once you buy one of these, you'll never need another one. Now, getting yourself a spare master link that is the right compatibility for your chain, I think is an absolute essential, because you will be unfortunate enough to snap a chain at some point. And if that happens out on the trail, you'll use your trail tool to get that broken link out of the way. And then the most sensible thing to do is get one of those master links and tape it onto one of your hoses near the handlebars there. If it stays on your bike, if it happens on the trail, you've got it there to fix it. If it happens at home, you're obviously going to be working on your bike, so it's always where it needs to be. Now in this case, I've got a 12-speed one to suit the 12-speed Shimano chain. It's taped on. You can obviously get 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12-speed options. Get yourself a couple, keep one in your riding bag, keep one on your bike, keep one at home, wherever you need to, but definitely it will save your bacon at some point if you keep one on your controls on your bars. Next up is another absolute essential, is a pump of some description. Now the best option, of course, would be to have a mini pump to keep with your bike and your riding gear, and to have a floor pump for home. But of course, that is a double expense. You can't take the floor pump with you, so the best way to start is by having a compact pump you can take with you. This one is excessively small, but it is a double action. That means it pumps on both the compression and the rebound. So basically you're getting a double inflation action. It works really well. I can get mountain bike tires up to a high pressure quite comfortably without too much exertion. Works great. It's got a little protective cap to keep mud from entering there if I store it on the bike, and it's good enough to use at home as well. Of course, in time, you want to be upgraded into a floor size pump because they're much easier and much faster to use, and in fact, it just takes all the hassle out of it. If you're going to do that, I definitely recommend checking out the tubeless compatible options. So they have a charging chamber built onto the pump. And the reason for that is you can inflate that charging chamber and you can release all of the air in a single hit to inflate your tubeless tyres. So at some point you're probably going to want to upgrade to tubeless. However, there is another option. If you already perhaps, if you've been given a floor standing pump and it doesn't have one of those chambers, you could invest in one of these. So this is essentially just the canister bit. You pump that air into here, and using this lever, you release it in a single hit, just like the ones that are built on pumps, but this is great if you already have a pump, or in my case, you can use it with a mini pump. You can pump this up with a mini pump and you can use this to dump the air straight into your tyres. It also makes a good portable option if you're going on a bike holiday, for example, or to keep in the back of your car if you're at the trails, stuff like that. But a decent mini pump is going to get you going, and of course, in time, you're going to want to upgrade to more usable stuff on a daily basis, especially if you start chopping and changing with your tyres. A mini pump becomes hard work when you're doing that. But for initial inflation and topping up on air, they're absolutely fine. Next up is something to keep your tools in. A cheap toolbox, something like this, old Stanley one. Don't actually know where this one came from, but it's a pretty good offering. Nice and cheap. It's got compartments. You can keep cables and bolts and other bits and pieces in there. And it will keep all of these tools in one place, so you're not going to lose that stuff. That's great for storage at home, perhaps in your shed or in your garage. It also means if you're going on a bike holiday with your mates or something like that, you can take the whole selection with you in the car. Again, all of this stuff would fit inside one of those. And of course you've still got the bare minimum options you can take with you on your ride. The whole point is it's a modular system, so you can use this in different ways and you can adapt to it. There's loads of different options for toolboxes out there. You might feel like you don't want something like this, you might feel like you want to just keep it inside a riding bag. That's absolutely fine. Now this is where things get a little bit more specialist, although I would say this is really valuable to get. There's a cassette tool and a chain whip. The reason for that is they're two of the most consumable parts of the bike. The chain and cassette, they're going to wear out constantly. And if you're having to pay labour charges at a bike shop all the time to change these, really it's a very simple job that you can do at home. By all means, support your bike shop with servicing and other stuff, but this really is a 5-minute job to change the chain and cassette. You get one of these tools, you might question the cost of them to start with, but you'll never need another one. They're the same, basically. So get yourself one of those. And to use the tool, obviously you're going to need a chain whip to hold the cassette in place. The tool undoes the lock ring on there. Now you've got a couple of options here. If you already have a vise at home, perhaps your parents or your dad has a vise in the garage, you can actually just put that in the vise and sit the wheel on it. So you won't need any additional tools. Failing that, you'll need an adjustable spanner. Something big like this is something ideal to do the job. Or perhaps you've already got something lying around the place, like a set of locking pliers or something like that. Essentially, that's all you need, but they are the two key parts to change your chain and cassette, along with an all-important chain tool that's on your trail tool already. Next up is a valve core remover. Now the valve core is the part that runs on the inside of the valve. Now when you're pumping up your tyres, on occasion you're going to damage that. In sod's law, that's going to happen at the side of the trail. If that gets damaged, you're going to lose your air pressure, so you do need to be able to change that component. That little component itself, that is the valve core, and it goes on the inside of the valve. There's a side-by-side for you so you can see that. Now if you have old inner tubes, it's worth going through these and removing the valve cores before you recycle the tubes. So it does mean they will come in handy and you keep those in your toolbox as a spare. But to remove those, you will need a valve core remover. Now it's quite a simple tool that just allows you to unscrew the valve, and doubly makes it really easy to top tyre sealant up if you're going to convert to tubeless. A little tip for you is when you upgrade to tubeless valves, when you get a tubeless kit, look for some tubeless valves that actually have a valve core remover built into the valve cap. Super useful, and given the fact that it's quite an occasional tool, it's the easiest and cheapest option because you're buying 2 for 1 there. However, as we always say here at GMBN Tech, the correct tool is the best one for the job. And as you start working on your bike more, it's going to make life easier. But choose a valve that's got a valve core remover built onto it to start with. And finally, the last tool, and in fact is a really, really important tool, is a set of cable cutters. Now, I was actually resistant to buying a set of these myself when I first started out. What I used to do was change the cable myself, go and buy a cable for a few quid from the bike shop, change it, set the gears up, and I'd coil it up basically at the end because I couldn't cut it at home with a pair of pliers because you just end up sort of splintering the cable there. Then you'd have to get a bike shop and buy them make them a cup of tea or buy them some biscuits or something, get them to cut it. So it worked out, it was much easier just to get myself a set of cable cutters, and I recommend you do the same. Don't buy cheap ones, get yourself some decent cutters and never use them for another job except for cutting the inner and the outer cables on the bike. Keep them as they are and they'll last you a couple of decades at least. I've still got my original set at home. They're only just started to go a little bit bad now after probably 20-25 years of use. That's pretty good value for money if you ask me, and it does mean you're able to perform a real good routine maintenance job without outside help. Now, you will need to change your cables on your bike fairly frequently, more so if you live in a wet climate like we do here in Europe. So there we go, that is the bare bones of a modular toolkit. Something that's going to help you work on your bike at home, keep you going when you're out on the trail, and just deal with day-to-day stuff. Of course, as your skills progress as a bike mechanic, you're naturally going to want to get better tools and more specific tools for the job, but that's where it starts. You don't need a lot of tools. And if you absolutely needed to, at the worst case, you could do it with just a single trail multi-tool. Although, like I said at the beginning of the video, they do make it a bit harder to work on specific parts of the bike. So if you can, just try and work on something like this. Working on your bike's fun, it keeps it in good order and saves you money at the end of the day. It's not a bad thing. But thanks for hanging around. Don't forget to subscribe and all the usual stuff. See you soon. Ta-ta.